Hello everyone, welcome to The Author's Crown. My name is A Crown. In this channel I will present to you stories written by both myself and occasionally stories written by good friends of mine. So without further ado, let's get this show started. Today's story is a fanfiction crossover that I wrote since not only is it October, but this month also has a Friday the 13th. Now, without further ado, I present to you Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Camp Blood.
The moonlight shone across the sky, passing the trees and reflecting off the dark, murky lake. The sounds of the woods echoing with the light wind. The tranquil noises soon drowned out by the roaring of two motorcycles. The source of the noise, two bikes flying down the road. The first bike carrying a burly man wearing a leather jacket with jeans and his ponytail hanging out of the bottom of his helmet, and his passenger, the second carrying a much skinnier man wearing a black jacket and camo jeans and a passenger. The two bikes pull off the main road and arrive near a small group of cabins. The skinny man and his passenger remove their helmets and dismount the bikes. The man said, "I told you it was here. The story was right." He kisses the passenger and then they leave their helmets on the bike. The burly man said, "So, you were right for once. Big deal, Skulovich." He and his passenger, who is identical to the other passenger, dismount and head over to the other. Skulovich sticks out his tongue out and mimics the big man. The man grabs him by the collar and shoves him down and laughs. Skull stands up and dusts himself off. Then he tells his passenger, "Snarky, you want to go somewhere more private?" She seductively smiles and says, "Sure, Skull, let's go and see if these cabins have beds." The other girl hugs the burly man and said, "Bulk, you want to go find a cabin too?" Bulk replied, "Nah, babe, let's go check out the lake." She smiled and takes his hand and they walk into the dark woods. Skull and Snarky explore the cabins, and she said, "Whoa, this place is totally creepy." "I dig it." Skull kicks a rusty bed and says, "This should do." Snarky smiles and pulls him in for a kiss. As they start making out, she pushes Skull onto the bed. She dances hypnotically and says, "I want to get out of these clothes real quick and show you something special. Won't you be my big, strong, and brave man and go get my bag from the bike?" She winks after saying this while Skull laughs excitedly. Then he runs outside to grab her bag. He trips and the goals but gets back up awkwardly, running towards the parked bikes. He gets the bikes but accidentally knocks over Bulk's. "Ah, crap," he snaps to himself before hurriedly struggling to pick up the bike. He backs up into a large figure which frightens him and he nervously says, I'm so sorry, Bulk. I didn't mean to." He gets no answer and turns around and begins to apologize more, but he is silenced as the large man grabs him by the throat. He gasps for air as he sees the large mask-wearing figure which tightens its grip around Skull's neck. Skull tries to fight it off, but is slammed headfirst into the bike. Skull falls to the ground bleeding. He tries to get up and run away, but the figure steps on his back, causing Skull to scream out in pain. Meanwhile, at the lake, Bulk is making out with the passenger, Sharky. When he hears the scream, he angrily says, "What did that moron do now?" He begins to get up, but Sharky pulls him back down and says, "Snarky is probably rocking his world." He kisses her again and forgets about the screaming and continues with Sharky. She painfully touches him before pushing him into the water. Bulk fights through the dark water and comes up for air, saying, "Oh, I'm so gonna get you back for that." He looks around and doesn't see her. He calls for her. He gets out of the water and searches for her by calling her name. He wanders back towards the campground and looks into the cabins, running in Snarky. He says, "Did your sister come this way?" She responds with, "No. Have you seen Skull?" He shakes his head, angrily, and walks back out towards the lake. Snarky gets up, but is suddenly impaled in the throat by a machete. She falls as the figure steps over her. Bulk angrily calls out, "Sharky! Skull! If you two are fooling around, I'm going to wallet the both of you." He hears the sounds of branches breaking and runs towards the source when he is hit by a large circular object. It surprises him as he falls. He picks it up and sees that it is Sharky's head. He instantly drops it and screams. He runs towards the bikes and stops, seeing Skull's mangled body sitting on the bike. He screams out, "Oh my god!" He is grabbed by his ponytail and he yells out in pain. The figure brushes off Skull's frenzied swings and lifts Bulk into the air. He throws Bulk into the bikes. The bike falling, Bulk crawls around screaming for help, but his pleas fall on nothing but the sound of the woods. The figure picks Bulk back up, who makes another worthless attempt to fight back, but once again sent crashing. This time his head goes through a wooden sign near the campsite. Bulk struggles to pull his head out of the sign. He fails and the figure comes closer to him as he begins to beg for mercy. But the figure says nothing. The figure swings his machete, separating Bulk's head from his body and the sign. Figure then picks up Bulk's severed head and walks away from the sign, which reads, "Welcome to Camp Crystal Lake," and the faint sound can be heard. Trini wakes up drenched in sweat and panting, trying to catch her breath. "Another nightmare," she says to herself. She reaches over to her beeping communicator. Zordon's voice came over the communicator. "Trini, we have an emergency. You are needed at the command center." Trini responds, "On my way." She changes and then hits the button on the side of the teleporter, which teleported her to the command center. She appeared alongside her fellow rangers. Jason, the Red Ranger, asks, "Zordon, what's the emergency?" The mentor answered, "Thank you for responding so quickly, Rangers. Bulk and Skull were traveling and have vanished from my sight." Billy, the Blue Ranger, said, "They completely vanished from your sight? I didn't even know that was possible." Zordon responded, "It is usually not. There must be an evil force at work here. I need you all to teleport there and find them." "We can teleport you to their last known location, which is near the blind area," Alpha says. Jason replied with, "We'll take care of it, Zordon." Knowing Bulk and Skull, they probably got themselves into a big heap of trouble, Kimberly, the Pink Ranger, stated. Zordon adds in, "One more thing. Once you enter the blind area, Alpha and I will be unable to contact you." Jason nodded. "We'll take care of it, Zordon," he said. "Proceed with caution, Rangers, and may the power protect you." The Rangers stand next to each other and teleported off towards Bulk and Skull's last location. They arrive at the road where two bikers turned into the camp. A man walked down the road, stops near them and said, "Don't go down there if you don't want to die." The Rangers looked at the man and Zack, the Black Ranger, asked, "Sir, what are you talking about?" The man answered, "That's Camp Blood. Everyone who goes there dies. You best listen to me. Many years ago, a boy drowned. Poor thing, the counselors weren't watching him. His mother came back years later and killed a bunch of people trying to reopen the camp, but one of them killed her, chopped her head off. Now they say his spirit wanders the camp, killing anyone who enters it." The man continued walking as the Rangers looked at each other and walked down the dirt road. Zack said, "Okay, so we know some people are crazy. Let's find Bulk and Skull, then get out of here." "I agree with Zack. The sooner we get out of here, the better," Billy said nervously, looking at the woods around them. Kimberly chimed in with, "I was just thinking, if we can't talk to Zordon, will we be able to morph?" Jason responded, "I'm hoping so. If not, it might be difficult, but we'll do it." The Rangers arrived at the sign at the campsite. They walked closer to see Bulk and Skull's motorcycles parked near the entrance of the campsite. "Well, they should be here somewhere. They wouldn't have left these behind," Trini said to the rest of the team. Jason agrees and leads the team closer to the lake. They all hang around and see a large house on one side of the lake across from the campground. Zack points out another large log cabin on the bank of the left side of the lake. Jason tells the group, "Okay guys, let's split up." Kimberly responded, "Jason, are you sure that's a good idea? We have no idea about this place." Jason answered, "This place has too much area to search. One section at a time. Kim, you and Zack check out the house. Trini and Billy, you check out the cabins over there. I'll check across the lake. That log cabin." So the teens got their separate directions. As Zack and Kimberly were walking around the lake to the house, Kimberly tells Zack, "I don't like this. Something is telling me we should have stayed together." Zack responded, Kim, I think you've watched too many scary movies. You just need to relax. Everything is going to be okay. We'll find Bulk and Skull, and then we'll get out of here. He nodded. Kimberly smiled and thanked Zach. As they approached the house, Zach knocked on the door a few times and loudly said, "Hello? Anybody here?" Kimberly started knocking as well, as she started to call out. "We're just looking for our friends," she yelled, as they started calling out for anyone to answer. A shadowy figure watched them from the woods. "I'm gonna go check around the back. Stay here and keep knocking in case someone answers," Zach told Kimberly. Kimberly worriedly replied with, "Okay, please hurry. This place is totally giving me the creeps." Zach nodded and walked around the back of the house. Kim looked up and down the front of the large house. She hears footsteps approaching and said, "That was fast. Did you—" She is stopped mid-sentence by a hand grabbing her throat. She squirms and raises a foot up and kicks the figure behind her in the face, but it does nothing but make the figure squeeze her throat tighter. As she struggles to breathe, she reaches for her morpher, but the figure takes it out of her hand and places it on her head and twists it forcefully, causing her neck to snap. Her body slumps and the figure drops her limp body before walking off towards the woods. Billy and Trini walk around the campground, and Billy asks, "Why do you think Zordon can't see here?" Trini answered with, "I don't know, but it can't be good." They continue looking around the cabin by cabin. "I hope the others are having better luck than us," Trini muttered. As they walked into the center of the campground, Billy is drawn towards the ground. As he kneels down to search, both hear yelling. Billy gets up and says, "What was that?" They both head in the direction of the noise. Jason finished rowing across the lake and get out of the search for the cabin. After passing a stump with an axe, he looks into the cabin and yells, "Bulk! Skull! Are you guys in here?" After getting no response, he hears a scream from across the lake. That sounds like Kim. "Oh my god, no!" Jason called out. After realizing that it's Zach screaming, Jason runs out of the cabin. An axe flies right past Jason and scratches his cheek and hitting the front wall of the cabin. Jason sees a large figure clearly. It wore black boots, a black shirt, a grey jacket, and a cracked hockey mask. Jason attempted to talk to it. He said, "Hey, who are you?" The figure didn't answer. Jason continued talking to it. "Are you one of Rita's monsters?" The figure just continued standing and staring at Jason. Jason gave up trying to talk to it and ran down the steps of the cabin and started using his martial arts skills on it. It had no effect, and it was just taking no damage. It just then swatted Jason away. Jason regained his composure and the figure pulled out a machete. "Okay, this one isn't playing around. I better not take any chances." He reached behind his back and grabbed his morpher and shouted, "It's morphing time!" He held out his morpher and yelled, "Tyrannosaurus!" In a flash of red light, Jason morphed into the Red Power Ranger. "Let's go, pal," he called out and began fighting the monstrous figure. The figure just took Jason's punches and kicks. It tried to grab Jason, who just rolled under the grab attempt. Jason attacked again, but this time slashed across the chest, sending sparks flying. Jason groaned but got back up. This time Jason summoned the power sword and began dueling the machete-wielding monster. Zach cradles Kim's limp body and cries as Billy and Trini ran up. Billy, with a shocked expression, said, "Oh God, what happened to Kimberly?" Zach answered, "I don't know. I was checking around the back and came back and find her like this. What could have done this?" They hear Jason called out. Trini looked over the lake and saw Jason fighting a monstrous figure. She called out, saying, "It must be that thing Jason is fighting. We need to help him." Zach, still crying, said, "We can't leave Kim here. We need to get out of here." Billy pulled out his hand and to Zach's shoulder responded, "We won't, but Jason needs our help. Kim wouldn't leave him by himself, would she?" Zach replied with, "No, she wouldn't." He stands up and wipes the tears from his face. He, Billy and Trini reach down behind themselves and Zach calls out, "It's morphing time! Mastodon!" As Billy calls out, "Triceratops!" Lastly, Trini called out, "Saber-toothed tiger!" Then they all run off to help Jason. Jason traded blows to blow with the figure, but is unable to damage him. The figure sended him flying back, but is caught by Trini, Billy, and as Zach fires at the figure. Jason thanked the others for their aid, but looks around and asks, "Guys, where's Kim?" Zach looked at Trini and Billy, then paused, then said, "She's gone." Billy's voice raises when he says, "What do you mean, gone?" Billy answered with, "She's dead, Jace." Jason stumbled back and mutters, What? No, she can't be." Trini added in, "It's true, Jason." Jason grabbed Zach and yells, "What the hell happened? You were supposed to have each other's back." Zach sadly says, I didn't even know it happened." Jason yells and looks at the figure and points his sword, saying, "You did it, didn't you? I'm gonna kill you." Jason charged and swung his sword, but he misses. The others tried to help, but they were knocked back by the massive figure and his swinging arms. Jason hits the figure, but it's only damaging it. It does nothing to stop the onslaught. The figure grabs Jason by the belt and his suit, then throws him. Jason Morpher flies in the opposite direction, and Jason demorphed. He flies through the air, and he hits the axe that is sticking out of the wall. Jason yells in pain. Zack blasts the figure as the others run over to Jason. The blast seemed to cause the figure some discomfort as it walks towards the woods. Zack helps Jason to a sitting position, and Jason yells in pain again. When Zack places his hand on Jason's back, he sees blood on his glove and says, "Jason, you're bleeding, man." Jason brushes the ranges off him and says, "I'll be fine. Just give me a minute. You three need to go after it." Trini said, "Jason, no, we need to get out of here and get help." Jason snapped, "I said I'll be fine. I gave you an order. Now go get that bastard." Trini cowered and got up with Billy and Zack. Zack said, "We'll be right back for you." Jason stared at Zack with pure anger and said, "It should have been you." Zack's voice, clearly upset, said, "I know, Jace. I'm sorry." Zack got up, and he, Billy, and Trini went after the figure. Jason, wincing in pain, got off onto the crawling position, and he looked at his morpher. He began crawling towards it. Every inch he moved caused him more pain. As he got closer to it, everything got very fuzzy and incredibly dark. He picked it up and began to call out to morph, but before he could finish, everything went black. He dropped his morpher. As he reached for the blood-stained morpher one last time in his breath, he said, "Kim, I'm sorry."
I want to shout out my good friend Tai Tiger. Without him, this channel wouldn't be possible. You can find his videos on his channels Tiger Tales, The Lost Stories, Tiger Tales Game Over, and the Ozamon Library.
Kill all the bad children for mother. Kill them for mommy like mommy killed for you, the disembodied voice said. The phrase repeated itself in the head of Jason Voorhees, just like it had always done. Since that night he had seen his mother decapitated. If only his mother had known he was alive after the drowning accident all those years ago. These children were different, but it didn't matter. All Jason knew now was mother and murder. Jason walked slowly through the woods, the voice in his head repeatedly telling him to turn back and finish them. Jason stopped and turned around, but something hit Jason and hit his machete, knocking it to the ground. Jason attempted to pick it up, but he quickly got hit by the yellow one. The voice returned, getting louder and louder, saying, "Kill for mommy, kill for mommy, kill ma, kill ma." Zack blasted at the monster, knocking its machete to the ground. Before it could pick it up, Trini hit the being with the paradaggers. Billy also hit it with his paralance. The figures knocked back to the ground. Zack looked at his fellow rangers and thought about Jason and Kim. He said to Billy and Trini, "Forget what Jason said. Go get help. Get help. Get out of here." Billy said, "We can't. Not like this. This thing is nearby. He'll chase us down." Trini added in, "I'll hold it off. I'm the best fighter out of us. You and Zack go." Billy and Zack ran, but the machete went flying, striking Zack in the back, sending sparks exploding around him. Billy yelled, "Zack, no!" and kept running and faded out of sight. Trini pushed back the figure and threw her daggers at it. Then Trini tried to run, but the figure grabbed her. She tried to talk with it. It just looked at her, then impaled her with the dagger she threw at it. She dropped to the ground and demorphed. The figure stomped on her stomach, and she screamed in pain before falling silent. Billy ran through the woods, panting as he avoided branches. He looked behind him and saw nothing. He burst out of the woods and saw Jason lying there lifeless. "God, Jason, no!" he said to himself before leaping into the boat and floated across, taking a moment to catch his breath. As he neared the other side of the lake, he looked up. All of a sudden, the figure burst out of the water and pulled Billy under. Billy tried to fight back, but the figure was too strong. Billy felt the figure's hand around his neck. As his violet is clouded by the dark and murky water, Billy saw the figure pulled off of him and out of his vision. A white-gloved hand reached down and helped him onto the shore. Billy regained his composure and saw Zach standing there, bloody and soaking wet. Billy called out, "Zach, you're alive!" Zach responded, "Barely. Lucky my suit took most of the blow from the machete." Billy hugged him gingerly. Zach recuperated the hug. It then backed away and said, "You need to go now. He's gonna come back." The figure approached the pair slowly. Zach picked up a nearby chain from Skull's bike and said, "For once, something one of these two did is gonna help." He charged at the figure and dodged the attack, wrapping it around the figure's neck and pulled it tight. Billy saw Zach holding the monstrous figure, which started to fly around, and said, "Time to go, big boy." He then roared and used all his strength to pull Jason back into the lake. They sank down, and Zach kept holding on. Jason slowly stopped flailing, and Zach's eyes closed as the last bubbles of air came out of his mouth. 2 months later, Billy looked in the mirror. He fixed his tie and put on his coat. His mother called up to him from his room, telling him he's going to be late. He responded by telling her, "I'll be right down, Mum." He headed downstairs, telling his mother and father he loves them both, and then he headed out. He got into the Radbug and drove down the street. He arrived at the Angel Grove Cemetery and headed over to where his friends' gravestones were. He looked at them and said, "I'm sorry you can't all be here today, but I know you'd want to make sure I didn't miss school. You guys will be there in spirit, but it's not the same. The school's had a beautiful ceremony for you guys. Hell, even for Bulk and Skull. I love you guys. I'll keep fighting the good fight for you." He got up and patted each gravestone before heading back to his car, as the visage of his friends could be seen in the sky. Aye, but Zordon, don't you think it's too soon?" Alpha said whilst pressing buttons on the console. Zordon responded, "I know it's only been a short time, but Billy cannot continue the fight against Rita's monsters alone. We must select new Power Rangers. The figure, known as Jason Voorhees at Crystal Lake, I fear is only a sign of things to come." Meanwhile, at the Crystal Lake, an eerie wind blew, causing animals nearby to go into a frenzy. The man who informed the Rangers the history of Camp Blood walked past the sign and looked out to the lake and began walking into the camp. He walked into the centre at the very same spot that Billy was drawn to, and he dug into the ground. He pulled out a book-shaped bag and began laughing like a maniac as a mark on the back of his neck started to glow bright red in the shape of the letter Z.
And that's the story for today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you like what you heard today, stay tuned for some awesome things to check out on the Zero to Hero Network. And thank you for listening to The Author's Crown.
Hey, I know you've been enjoying what you're listening to. Please insert name of show here. And if you've been enjoying that, come on over to the Zero to Hero podcast, where Billy and myself, the bulk and school of podcasting, go through and examine all kinds of things like 90s nostalgia, the moon landings, historical plots, assassination attempts, and, weirdly enough, genetics. Come on over to the Zero to Hero podcast if you want to talk about weird things.
Hey there, and I apologise for interrupting, but If you're a fan of Power Rangers, I have a question for you. Did you ever wonder what would happen if in Power Rangers Super Mega Force they failed and the Armada won? Well, I've actually answered that question by writing a story called Power Rangers Magnificent Megaforce, a fanfiction where the Armada wins, and 50 years into the future, the Armada have taken over the entire planet. But there's a saving grace in a ranger and a guide and a ghost. If that sounds all confusing or yet intriguing, then maybe you guys should go check out Power Rangers Magnificent Megaforce on Tiger Tales, found on YouTube. My name is Ace, and I use a device called the Color Matrix, which allows me to hijack alternative universe versions of myself. I have the multiverse at my disposal, from being a Power Ranger to being a Spider-Man to piloting the Orville to being a vampire slayer. I can do it all. I can spend 8 hours of my time. Of course, time is different in each universe, but 8 hours of my time piloting a version of myself. So come, explore the multiverse with me. See what my world is like in different universes. Explore the multiverse. If you want to hear such stories, then come and listen to The Color Matrix on Tiger Tales, The Lost Stories, found on YouTube.
Do you ever wonder what would happen if
you give a dad a podcast.
Hello, all my beautiful people.
Mom, I'm not going to college like we planned. I'm going to take a couple of years off. I just gave all my college money to this professional wrestling promoter, and I'm going to be a big superstar one day.
I'm a human and I'm a chiropractor.
I wasn't about to call you dad, so.
I'm what you call a nerd fan.
And the Monos Chronicles, the new web series that I'm working on.
We inadvertently made that kid cry. We didn't mean to.
I mean,
people get really mad at those videos for some reason. Like it triggers certain people. Yeah.
First tryout, made the team, made starting position. I was right guard for a little while.
Hey Jared, that swerve I was going to tell you about, here it is.
It's going to be from a nerdy dad's point of view.
You're starstruck. It's not a big deal, man.
I am being starstruck.
I made a really good career out of being able to bump, sell, and I had a punch me face.
That's why they call it If You Give a Dad a Podcast.
Exactly. Available everywhere podcasts are found.
Hey there, podcast listener. You enjoying what you're listening to? Well then, do I got a special treat for you. Storytime with Cosplay Dude 637. That's me. I'm your host. And I like to tell you stories. Stories that I personally enjoy. So, buckle up, get comfortable, because we're going on a wild ride.
Riddle me this. What do you get when you get 3 Power Ranger fans who also write Power Ranger fan fictions and upload them on separate podcasts and YouTube channels, and you happen to put the 3 of them together and they form a unique Power Ranger storyline? Here's your answer. You get the 3 Ranger Bros, who is myself, Tai Tiger, the Red Corner Ranger, Mark, and the Cosplay Dude 637. We are the 3 Ranger Bros, and we came up with the idea called Power Rangers Global, a storyline where 4 different Rangers from different universes team up to save Universe 2118, a universe ruled by the gods. Now, if you want to hear Power Rangers Global, you can find it on Tiger Tales, the YouTube channel, and Nerds Through Comics, the podcast, and you can find that podcast anywhere that podcast can be listened to. So one more time, that's Power Rangers Global on Tiger Tales, the YouTube channel, and Nerds Through Comics, the podcast.